In Eis Gimel, the Rebbe explains the chilek between the luchas rishonis and the luchas achronis, that it's the difference in Avodas Ha'adam. It's the difference whether the support comes from above or that it comes from within yourself, as in the luchas achronis. It was the level of Baal Tshuva. The whole Arichas explaining how the whole idea is that it should be the dira b'tachtonim, that it should come from the person itself, and that's what shmini atzeres is. Versus to be able on Yom Kippur, it's the hamshocha milmaila, and on shmini atzeres it comes milmata, and that's the hamshach advarim, as the Rebbe will explain. We'll go step by step. Gimel. Yuvon ze behagdim tchila inyan luchas harishones v'luchas ha'achrones ba'avodas ha'odom. So we understand this, the questions that the Rebbe asked before, by first introducing the idea of the first luchas and the latter luchas, as it is in the service of the person. The main intention of the Torah being given, it should be the receiving of the Torah, which means avodas ha'adam, that the person should work to receive it, to get it, not so much to be given it, but for the person to receive it. The luchas harishonesu inyan avodas hatzadikim. The first luchas is the level, the idea of the service of tzaddikim. The Yidden, as he said before, Poska Zu Hamosam, they were in a higher state. There was no failures over there. There was no teshuva. They were tzaddikim. Luchas achrenes, after the second luchas came, Hu inyan avodas abal tshuva. That's the idea of the service of abal tshuva. That came after the egel, and then they got the second luchas. So it was the avodas abal tshuva. So v'hamaila the luchas achronis al luchas harishonis. So what is the advantage of the later luchas over the first luchas? Whom mipnei sha'avodas hatshuva nailis yoser ma'avodas hatzadikim. That is because the service of teshuva is higher than the service of tzaddikim. The teshuva's service is on a higher level, greater than the avodah of tzaddikim. The idea is the hine klolus achiluk ben luchis harishonis leluchis ha'achronis. The general difference between the first luchas and the latter luchas is the nesinas luchas harishonis hoisom mitzad lamayla. The given of the first luchas came from above. It's Hashem. The first luchas were given to us from above. As we say, Vayered Havaya al Har Sinai. Hashem descended on Mount Sinai. That means the Eberster gave it down. The Hagam Shahagil Uidematan Toira Paul Gamba. As the Rebbe articulated before, the revelation of Matan Torah impacted the world, v'gam b'hadaimim shabai, also in the inanimate of the world. So we know that the first luchas also influenced, impacted the world and the daimim. V'ad sheha olam gam hadaimim shabai, to the extent that the world, including the inanimate of the world, is geworden durchgenommen Mahagilu de Matan Torah, became penetrated through the revelation of Matan Torah. Afal became, but still that impact ein ze shenase zichuch tmidi va'aliyah b'ha'olam. It is not that there became a permanent refinement and an elevation in the world. It's not something that has become part of the world so that it stays. It is only that it shined the revelation of above. So that's the way it impacted the power of that revelation impacted the world, but it was all the revelation. The same thing as what happened by the first luches Matan Torah's Yidden were impacted. The Masha Hagilu, the Matan Torah Paul Gam Bahaguf. The fact that the revelation of Matan Torah impacted also the body, Shaposka Zuhamosom, that their Zuma, their this the dirt that they collected on themselves from the sins from before. The Gemara says that stop Poska Zuhamosom. Hoyezem Mitzad HaNeshama. That came from the soul. The Beis Matan Torah Hoya Etzlom Gilui Etzem Haneshama, because Matan Torah, the Yidden experience a revelation of the essence of their soul, B'chinas Yechida, level of Yechida, She'eino Mitzius Li'atzmo, that the level of Yechida is not an entity by itself. V'chol mitziusa, that level of the neshama of Yechida, its entire existence is huzeh sheikliu mekabelas mebechinas Yochid, is that it is a vessel and it receives from the level of Yochid. So that's what happens at Matan Torah, the etzem of the neshama, which is connected, which is a vessel to the level of Yochid, came to be open. And Yechida is part of the neshama system, it's part of the neshama. And therefore it impacted also the part of the neshama which is in the body. Since also the level of Yechida is tied to the body. So that's why the revelation of Yechida was also shined in the body. Ad b'chinas ekev sheba, to the extent that it even touched the heel in the foot of the person. As we say, similar to what it says in the pasuk with regards to Avram, Ekev asher shoma Avraham b'koili gomer. So Ekev means because, but Ekev means also the heel, which means even the heel of Avram listened to me, meaning that it penetrated in the body, the neshama impacted by Avram up till the heel. That was the experience that we had at Matan Torah by the Luchas Harishonis. But it was all mitzad, the above mitzad the neshama. Vatam lo zehu. So what's the reason, Take, that is not lasting and it's only temporarily? The reason is since the revelation of Matan Torah was in a way that it came from or from above, it's a arousal of above, and it wasn't through the awakening and the arousal of below. So therefore it wasn't lasting. It came from Lamaila, it came from Hashem. But wait a minute. How could we say that? But the Luchas Harishonis came after the Sfiras Ha'omer, which is preparation. So why are we saying that it came from above without preparation? The Hagam Shoysa Avodah the Sfiras Ha'omer b'meshach hazayin shavuos shebein tziyis Mitzrayim l'matan Torah. For all those, there was this service of counting of the Omer during the 7 weeks in between Yitzias Mitzrayim, when they left Egypt to Matan Torah. So why are we saying that it didn't come through Isarusa de Latata, but they did work? They prepared for 7 weeks. But nevertheless, that cannot be considered a real arousal from below, because how they move on, Shayidei Avodah Zu, it's understood that through this Avodah, Shebemeshach Hamentes Yom, that took place the 49 days of preparation, the Nun Yom, the 50, they Tishperu Chamishim, they get it on their own. Loi Hoyu Be'erech Liyes Bebchinas Keli. They were not in a level to be a vessel like Gilul Matan Torah, to the revelation of Matan Torah. That preparation did not really make them into a vessel. Preparation, it's not really a Surusa del Tata Ki'im. That's not what brought down Matan Torah. Shagilui, the Matan Torah, the revelation of Matan Torah came from above, an arousal of above on its own, not because of what we did. Vani hamaschil, as the Abish the Medrash says, I starting, it comes from Hashem. So it's not really Sarusa de Latata, the 49 days, the 50 days preparation. So if it's not a Sarusa de Latata, so why did we need that? So why don't we just have Matan Torah straight after Yitzias Mitzrayim? Why do we need the preparation days? Ma shehutzrach Elias avodah lifnei Matan Torah. The fact that we needed avodah before Matan Torah, urak b'derech hachona levat. That was only by means of a preparation alone. Ubedugma samevur bekama mekoyma is similar to what's explained in many places. Sometimes it's not called a serusa de latata that elicits the serusa de leila, but it's only a preparation. So he explains in many places, Be'inyan ha'hefresh shebein hisarusa de le'ela shalifi erecha sarusa de letato. There is sometimes the arousal of above comes that it is relative to the sarusa de letato, which means there is a connection. The sarusa de letato actually is comparable to what comes down. To sometimes the Sarusa de Leila above b'derech matona she'eni Sarusa de Latata magas l'shom klal, and the other type of arousal of above that comes as a gift. That the work, the Sarusa de Latata, the arousal, the awakening from below, magas l'shom klal, doesn't reach there at all. So it's explained, Agam shegam Sarusa de Leila she'b'derech matona, that although this is Sarusa de Leila comes as a gift, that will only come also after first having the awakening and the arousal from below. And arousal of Sarusa de Leila. So first you have the arousal of above that is relative to the arousal of below comes first, and then you get the Sarusa de Leila, which is as a gift, which is not connected, but still you need to first have the Sarusa de Leila and the Sarusa de Latato, the Sarusa de Latato brings the Sarusa de Leila, and then you can get. So why do we need that? And then we're saying it only comes after that. So that doesn't mean that the first Isarusa de Latata brings down the second Isarusa de Leila as well. It's explained, it's not that the Isarusa de Latata can draw it down. Ki hamshochas Isarusa de Leila zu, because bringing down that level of Isarusa de Leila, that is from a level in which the Sarusa Latata can't reach there. So it's not mean that your Isarusa de Latata brought down that higher level of Isarusa de Leila because it's in a place where your Isarusa de Latata didn't reach them. So why do we need first the Isarusa de Latato that brings the Isarusa de Leila before you can get the Isarusa de Leila as a gift? Uma shenimshachas achere kedima so Isarusa de Latato. And the fact that it only comes down after the introduction of the arousal of above, and also the arousal of above that comes relative to Isarusa de Latato, after that process, we can get to the higher level of Isarusa de Leilo. That is because the Eibishter doesn't rest only in a place which is whole. So basically, the first Isarusa de Latato that brings this first Isarusa de Leila helps you make that you should be a whole, the place that prepares the person. And the place should be Asar Shalim. So later on, when the Isarusa de Leila comes, it has where to rest, but it's not that it brings it down. So that's why we explain why we need first the Isarusa de Latato, even though the Isarusa de Leila is a gift, and it comes down on its own as a gift, not because of your arousal, but still you need the process in order to create the proper space for that Isarusa de Leila to come down, to make it an Asar Shalim, to make it a whole place. So similarly, it's as it pertains to this service during this 7 weeks, Lifnei Matan Torah, that before Matan Torah, Sha'avoida loy hoiso keli lagilu de Matan Torah. The Avoida, the service that took place in those 7 weeks, that was not a vessel to receiving the Matan Torah, so that it wasn't Shaloi Be'erach for that. Ve'ein shayich loymar sha'avoida himshicha es hagilui de Matan Torah, and it doesn't apply to say here that the work drew down the revelation of Matan Torah. Ve'rak b'derech hachana bilvad, this was only in a way of preparation. Shal yidei avedosam nasu me'ein keli, that through their avoida made them sort of into a vessel. And there's a vessel meaning not really a receptacle. It made them an asar shalim sort of avaloi keli mamish, not mamish a keli, lagilu the Matan Torah, to the revelation of Matan Torah. If they were mamish a keli, that means they became sarusa del tata. But this is somewhat of a preparation, so then later it can come down on the higher level. Ze gufo, and this itself, mashahoyu me'ein kli lagilu de Matan Torah, the fact that they were somewhat of a vessel for the revelation of Matan Torah through their avodah, hu mitzad shorshom umekoidim. That is not something of their own. This is just because their root and their source. Mitzad ha'aves v'ha'imois, because of the father and the mothers, our forefathers and the foremother. Ad le'echad ha'Avram, till the first one, till Avram. That was the reason that we became a keli. Shalochein yesh kosal kodaitov, the fact that we're saying that it starts off because of the obvious impact on the person. That's why there is a thought b'kisvei ha'arizal, in the rising of the Arizal, that the idea of Matan Torah started in the day of the forefathers, because it's really all started with Avram, who inspired everything. The Kol Zehoya Beluchas HaRishonos, this all took place during the first Luchas. Mash'enkein Lucha and Sinas Luchas HaAchronos. Hoysai de Sarusa de Latato. But the second Luchas, but the first Luchas came from above. It was Matone. It was inspired by the Ovis. But the second Luchas, They came through Jerusalem, they came from below. Avoid the Satshuva de Bnei Yisrael al Chet HaEgel, that when the Yidden did tshuva for the sin of the Egel, Hoiso Isaruso de Letato, She'oidera v'imshicha hagilu de luchas achrenas. Then there was an arousal of below that awoken, aroused, and it drew down the gilu of luchas achrenas. We impacted it directly from this second luchas. Zo mashenisinas luchas achrenas hoiso b'chodesh Tishrei. That's why the luchas were given on the month of Tishrei. So now it's connected to the general month of Tishrei, which Shmini Atzeres is part of it. Kinyonei chodesh Tishrei boyim al yidei ha'avodah di Elul. The avodah of Tishrei comes through the avodah of Elul. Shehi keli beisarusa de letato. That becomes the vessel, and that's the arousal of below. Shemeiredes umamsheches esoinyonim de Tishrei, that arouses and draws down the matters of Tishrei. The preparation from Nisan, from Yitzias Mitzrayim until Matan Torah, that's only me'ain kli. It's not an Isarusa Tata that brings down the Isarusa de La'ela, but the preparation of the month of Elul before Tishrei, that is a direct Isarusa de Tata, that the aspects of the month of Tishrei come through the Avodah of Elul. And because it is from them, that's why there is a refinement and elevation in the lower from its own. The loiki beluchas harishonos, unlike the first luchas, over here it's the person himself, that the person himself, they changed around. It wasn't from above. Zo the luchas harishonos v'luchas achronos v'avodas ha'odom. That's why the two luchas, the way the gilui came and luchas harishonos came luchas achronos, the way it's in the service of man, hem avodas hatzadikim, v'avodas hatshuva. That's the two different between the work, the service of tzadikim, and the service of tshuva. Ki avodas hatzadikim. Because when the tzaddikim service, koilel gam ham shochash al yidei avodah, which would include also what they bring down through their avodah. Hibechinas ar yosher, it's straight. They don't fail and do tshuva, they go straight. And they're milmayla lamata. Mashe enkein al yidei avodas hatshuva, but through the service of tshuva, nifal inyan chodesh. So here's something new takes place. Shagam hamata gufa mizdachech misala. So that also the bottom one, it's not just you get from above, but also the mata is refined and is elevated. That happens through tshuva. That happens on Elul. That happens in the luchas hari, the preparation. That happens by the luchas achrenes and Yom Kippur, because that was the level of tshuva, and that impacted also the mata. So while the luchas rishonis also impacted the mata, but it wasn't mitzad the mata, it was mitzad the lamaila, because it was a higher level, and the avodah was not a preparation. But when we talk about the second luchas over there, it came from the mata, and it was a refinement, and that brought about that level of the aliyahs that Rebbe will continue to explain.